Welcome to the PaynePoints Podcast. We tell the stories of small businesses, the people that run them, and the journey they are on. Our purpose is to gather a new perspective on starting, growing, maturing, and maintaining businesses of all sizes. So grab that cup of coffee, sit back, and join us as we start the conversation. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Sarah Harbuck, and joining me today is Kristin Ellis.
Good morning.
And our very special guest in studio today is Tim Bryant of the Bosslight in Nacogdoches, Texas. Hello, Tim.
Hello.
How's it going?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Yeah, for a Monday.
Yeah.
That's the best you can hope for.
For a rainy Monday at
Yes,
that.
sleepy Monday.
Yes.
We could all be taking naps right now.
I would normally be asleep right now. This is my day off,
So
you know.
I appreciate you taking this, extra measure of, not sleeping in and getting out in this awful weather. We really
only for you two.
We appreciate it.
Thanks. Smooth talker there. Well, before we get into all the business questions, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and, for those who might be listening that don't know who you are, just like a little rundown of you.
A synopsis of me?
Yeah.
Well, I was pretty much raised in Nacogdoches.
Okay.
Spent some time in New Orleans, but I spent most of my time in Nacogdoches. I am a writer, a bookstore owner, and a musician. Not necessarily in that order. I don't know. I'd have to, on any given day, it might be a
One
different
or the
order.
other.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I mean, I am a combination of all the things that I do, and that's
Yeah.
what I do. So,
There you go.
Jack of all trades.
Hey.
Yeah. Well,
Sort of.
a jack of all trades, master of none is
Yeah,
what I always say.
That's my little, I know how to do a lot of things, so I'm just not very good at all of them.
That's me right there.
Yeah.
So you own the Bosslight in Nacogdoches.
Right.
And that's kind of a sort of a Nacogdoches landmark in a way. It's been around for a while. How long have y'all been in business?
Almost 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And we have kind of become something by accident, I guess.
Yeah. It's kind of like the social, cultural hotspot in Nac, I would say.
Nice.
I feel like a lot of people will talk about it and they're like, oh yeah, there's a thing at the Bosslight tonight, or they're having an art show, or they're having a poetry thing.
Right.
Very cool.
So it's bringing a little bit of culture to this,
Right.
Piney Woods area.
Our little
when you
town
need
and
it.
I would say that's true.
Our little
for the
corner
most
of
part.
East Texas. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
tell us how that came about, owning a bookstore and social cultural mecca in a tiny East Texas
Well,
town.
we didn't sit down and draw up plans to become a cultural mecca.
No.
We did not do that.
Really? Oh, man.
I actually had a store previous to the Bosslight called the Runaway Mule, and it was a
What an interesting name.
Yeah.
well, that's another story. If you got time for that story, I don't know. But it had basically it was a T-shirt shop.
Okay.
We designed Nacogdoches themed and Texas themed
Okay.
T-shirts.
Did you do your own printing and everything?
No, we had somebody that did our printing for
Okay.
us that helped us out with the with that. But we designed the shirts and then they
Nice.
printed them for us.
All right.
And I wrote my first novel. Here's what happened. I wrote my first novel in 2010. So of course, you're going to put your own novel in your T-shirt
In
shop,
your book.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
in your
it
store.
became a T-shirt shop with one book, basically. And I went on to write another book and another book. So that started happening with some irregularity, but every once in a while, something else would join the library there. And I became friends with a writer in Nacogdoches named Joe Lansdale.
Okay.
And so I put some of his books in there. He's a lot more popular than I am, so he brought
Right.
more people in. I started going out to different, to Austin and places and signing books. And what would happen when I would go and sign books at different places, people would say, can you put my book? I would sign books with other authors oftentimes.
Yeah.
And they would say, can you put my book in your store? So the the book section got bigger
Just
and
kept
bigger
growing
over time.
and growing, yeah.
So it happened very organically, it sounds like.
It happened very organically and kind of in slow motion, but at some point it just reached a tipping point where we thought, we need to pause and rethink this and come back as something bigger and better than what we're doing right now. And that's when the Bosslight was born.
So
basically.
what made you decide on that name?
Oh, well, now we're getting back to the Runaway Mule.
Let's hear about that.
We got time for that
this
story.
is a really long. This is going to take a long time.
You can give us a Cliff Notes version.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. The Runaway Mule had a story. The Marx Brothers. I don't know, y'all old enough to know who the Marx Brothers are. Okay.
Yeah, we are.
The Marx Brothers actually, folklore says they started their comedy career in Nacogdoches, Texas.
Really?
They were passing through Nacogdoches in 1910, I think it was.
Okay.
And so the story is they were doing a matinee performance at the what's now the Cole Art Center, was then the Nacogdoches Opera House.
Yeah.
And Mule had been tied up. Now this is 1910, so pre-cars mostly for the most part. And a mule was tied up outside of the Opera House, and it became unmoored from its tether, and started causing all kinds of.
Can tell he's a writer.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. That's great.
Can you tell I've told this story a time or two?
Sure.
It started causing havoc in the streets, let's say.
Okay.
And somebody came running in the middle of their. Now I should back up that they were on stage. The Marx Brothers. They weren't doing comedy at this point. They were doing like 4-part barbershop quartet harmony, singing, and some kind of I don't know. It's vaudeville. It was vaudeville, but it wasn't comedy. But anyway, somebody came in the middle of their show hollering, "Runaway Mule, Runaway Mule." Well, people started getting up and walking out of the show. This is the way the story goes, and Groucho.
They needed to see if it was their mule.
Well, people thought maybe this is more entertaining than what's going on the stage.
That's
so
true.
they started getting up and walking out. And Groucho, he wasn't Groucho yet. He was Julius Marx. But he did not like the sight of his audience getting up and walking out. So he, off the top of his head, started singing. And I will not sing it because it's too early in the morning, but he started singing Nacogdoches is full of roaches and just making up this comedy off the top of his head.
Is that where that comes from?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So they say that Groucho was the one that came up with that first.
That's crazy.
Started singing it off the top of his head, just improv, trying to desperately to get the crowd back on his side.
Wow.
And it actually worked. So the crowd started coming back in. Well, what did he do? He kept it up. He started doing comedy stuff, and his brothers joined in. So they say that was the birth of the Marx Brothers doing comedy.
Very cool.
And there's actually some indication that it's true, because I know that there's been some investigating of,
Right. Sure.
and that within weeks they were actually putting comedy into their act. Now, put a place mark there. I'm telling this story. This is the Runaway Mule. Every day people would come in and say, "Why did you name your store the Runaway Mule?"
I want to know the story.
And I told that story over and over.
You almost had to get like a placard just to put it up and be like, okay, there
well,
you go.
I know. Well, people used to always tell me, "You should write that down. You should write it down." And I finally did write it down.
Yeah.
I've actually got it on a card that I hand out to people these days.
There you go. Wow.
But to answer your question about the Bosslight, it means nothing. I came up with a name that means absolutely nothing. So I would have.
So you didn't have a
so
story
I did
to
not
tell?
have to sit and tell a story every day.
That's fantastic.
I like the sound of it.
I felt like maybe you pulled that from some other inspiration or from one of your books or a book you've read. It feels like I've heard the Bosslight as a title for something in the past. It could just be one of those Mandela effect things, though.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
I've never seen another Bosslight except for my Bosslight.
Yeah,
and
I think it must be that.
Yeah.
To be honest, I can break a little bit of news here this morning and tell you there is a sort of a story to the Bosslight.
Okay.
Me and my best friend, who actually, his name is Jimmy. We have a podcast called the Tim and Jim Show, by the way.
Cool.
plug real quick there.
Yeah, of course.
We used to be in a band together. I'm a musician, and we were in a band together. We played around Nacogdoches a lot, and we would go out after gigs a lot. And we didn't smoke or drink, and we don't suggest anybody does that. But sometimes we might do that after a gig. I mean, it was okay after a gig, right?
Sure. It's a lifestyle.
yeah.
Wind down a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one night we were smoking cigars, which we would often do. I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, it was a post gig cigar, and we would bum them off of people most of the time. We were like Charlie Chaplin. We just pick up other people's cigarette butts and things and smoke them, half the time. Anyway,
starving artist.
Yeah. So Jimmy hollers out, "Does anybody have a light?" Because we didn't have a light, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody came up with this cigarette lighter and flicked the bick, so to speak, and this huge flame burst out and like singed our eyebrows, and everybody jumped back 10 feet, and he said, "Well, that's the Bosslight."
Oh,
Nice.
there you go.
I like it.
Now you flash forward about 15 years after that fact, and I'm thinking of names that mean absolutely nothing but sound cool, and somehow that name, the Bosslight, came into my head.
Well, it seems to have worked for
And,
you.
and,
so
and,
far.
that, and that is really,
Yeah.
and I don't go around telling that story. And when people in the store ask me that, I say, I just made it up because I like the sound of it.
It's on the internet forever now.
Now I don't have to.
Yeah.
I can tell everybody to listen to your podcast.
There you go.
Yeah,
From now on.
totally. If you want to hear the story, go listen to the podcast.
Didn't we just waste a lot of time?
No,
No,
not at all.
no, this is the kind of thing I like hearing. It's
Yeah.
great.
It's part of telling the story,
So it's not very common that you hear of an author owning a bookstore. At least I don't know that I've really ever. You've had, I've heard people who have been interested in being a writer or whatever, and they've worked in bookstores or libraries or things like that. But you now own a bookstore because of the organic way of your, you writing books and then your friends wanting their books in there. And
Right.
So, obviously you like books.
I do like books. Can you tell by the shirt I'm
I
wearing
like it.
today?
It says book nerd.
Book nerd
I love
shirt,
it.
yes.
Book nerd. I am a book nerd.
I'm right there with you on that. So being a writer and having a bookstore, what is that like a nice marriage of the two? Are there challenges that come up that kind of like, oh, I got to get this stuff written today, but I also got to go into the store and take care of this, and this?
Yeah.
Or how do you balance the creative side of being a writer plus the business owner side of things?
I've learned to do it better now than I used to. I used to be one of these writers that, I would write at night after my kids had gone to bed. I would set up everything just perfectly and sit down and start pecking at the keyboard. And now basically I sit down and write anytime I have time in the day. I mean, that's what's great about having a bookstore. If it's a slow day, it's not so bad because I often will get a lot of writing done.
Yeah.
So,
Nice. Yeah.
So, and it took some practice. It's kind of like a muscle. And the more you use the muscle, the better you get at it.
I understand.
I got to where I could sit down and within 10 seconds be switched over from being Tim the bookstore guy to Tim the writer, and all of a sudden I'd be right there in the book typing away.
Right.
So
I
so it does.
Yeah,
it
is.
Of course, it's a great thing.
It's like working. I've worked from home and I have small children, so
Yeah.
I get like 5, 10, 15-minute increments to get
Yes.
work done.
Yeah.
And after a while, it's been several years now, and now it's easier to switch back and forth
And you
from
learn
mom
how-
mode to work mode to
And you have to learn how to do that.
Yeah,
kind
it
of.
takes a minute. Yeah.
It's like sleep when the baby is sleeping.
Yes.
Kind of a deal. Right.
Yeah. Used to take me forever to fall asleep. Now I'm like,
Now it doesn't,
nope,
does it?
Nope.
That's.
I have
right
time.
there.
I got to do it now.
After
figure it out.
sleep deprivation for
Well,
years and years,
this-
that'll just do it to you.
This is true. Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, really, it's
very
almost
similar.
identical.
Yeah, it is. You have to,
Yeah.
but you do. It does take time, and it is like a muscle. You just get to where you figure it out. You make it work.
You do. Yeah. You make it work.
Why don't you, before we move on to anything else, why don't you tell us a little bit about the books you've written
Yeah, I
and
wanna
what
hear about that.
the stories are like and the titles?
Are they fiction? Are they based on?
It's all fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. My agent wants me to write a nonfiction book, but at this point, I'm just purely fiction.
I feel like that's a whole different
It is.
animal.
It is a whole different thing. It's a whole
Yeah.
different muscle, and that's the one I haven't used in a long, long time.
Yeah.
The first book I wrote was called Dutch Courage, and I actually wrote it. It's a character. His name is Dutch Courage. It's set in the 1950s in Fort Worth, and he's a private detective. It's just a detective novel.
Like a Perry Mason
kind of
like you know, Agatha Christie.
Kind of like
mystery?
yeah.
Awesome.
A little
That's
bit like
my
that.
favorite genre, by the way. So
Yeah. well, yeah. I got some books to sell you then.
yeah, it sounds like it.
And I wrote that one, like I said, in 2010, right after I had graduated from SFA with my creative writing degree.
Okay.
And I based it on a character I had written some short stories about while I was doing the degree.
Yeah, so you had he'd already been developed a little bit.
Yeah, I knew the character, so I figured, okay, I can write a novel. So I did. I wrote a novel and put it out there. And really, to be honest with you, I thought it was one and done. I didn't think I would write another of him anyway. I thought, I would go on to write something else.
Sure.
But what happened was it got really popular, and people started writing me, asking me when the next book was coming out.
Well, that's fantastic.
And I'm not talking about my aunt and my cousins. I'm saying people I didn't even know were writing me, saying
read the book. And
That's exciting.
Right,
yeah,
right.
That's great.
Which kind of surprised me somewhat, or a lot of what.
It's like, hey, maybe I'm good at this.
Well, so the second book came out after a year or two. I finally convinced myself, okay, I will write another book based on this character because I know the guy.
Yeah.
Okay, and at this point now, well, I wrote 4 books based on Dutch Courage, on that character.
Oh, wow.
And then I got an email one day from a guy named Gary Goldstein at Kensington Books in New York City. And he said, I've read your Dutch Courage books. Would you be open to writing a couple of Westerns for me?
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, absolutely, I would. So I've written 2 Westerns now for Kensington Books.
Wow.
And somewhere along the way, I got an agent, so it became a real job. And my agent recently resold the 4 Dutch Courage books to a new publisher.
Okay.
Called Speaking Volumes, and they're putting them all out again with new covers and all new typeset and everything.
Okay.
I mean, it's like whole new audiences out there waiting to see the 4 Dutch books.
Right.
And after they signed me to those 4 books, they came back and said, would you be interested in writing a new fifth Dutch Courage book just for us?
Wow.
So I did that, and now that's going to be coming out too, and I just keep writing.
That's
You've done,
awesome.
You've done a lot in 11 years.
Yeah,
that's
that
a
is.
lot.
I think I've written about 11 books. So I'm writing about one a year.
My
About
goodness.
one a year.
That's great.
Yeah.
Which if I'd get motivated, I could probably write 2 a year, but I haven't done that
Yeah,
yet.
but you don't want to get burnt out.
Well, I'm actually on my second book already of this year, so I think maybe this year I'm
in February of 2021.
Well, I had
technically
you wrote a book in a month.
Exact,
Oh, well,
not
yes, I guess it's
exactly. No,
March,
I finished one in January that I started in November of last year.
Okay.
And I'm working on.
That's impressive.
So I'm accumulating speed as we go along, I guess you could say.
I know this is kind of meandering away from business topics, but I'm very curious.
I'm a good meanderer.
No,
so.
I love it. As a writer, like, do you sit down and do you plan kind of how your book is going to go, or do you just sit and let inspiration wash over you?
That's such a great question because that's an important answer to me, and the answer is no. I do not plan anything. In fact, with the current project, not my agent, but the publisher is wanting me to write a synopsis, and I hate writing synopses because I don't plan. I don't
you don't know what's going to happen.
outline
and
the book.
It could change. If you outline it, then you could decide later that
Well,
that's not going to work.
But what happens with me, if I outline the book, I feel like I've already written it. I just lose all interest. I don't even want to write the thing anymore.
You want to discover it as it's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. I want to discover
it more fun.
The same way that the reader would discover it as they. And that's the only way I can write, to be honest with you. Me and my friend Joe Lansdale talk about this a lot. Mm-hmm. He's a writer too. I think there's a subconscious part of me that does outline without me realizing it because it always works out,
Yeah.
It always wraps up with a nice little bow on the end, or maybe not. Some mine aren't, necessarily a bow on the end of them, but they do end, appropriately. So I think there's a subconscious part of you that does kind of know and kind of keeps track of what you're doing, but I don't plot anything.
No,
I don't.
Okay. I've listened to many interviews with different authors.
Yeah.
Really big famous authors, J.K. Rowling and Stephen King and
Sure.
J.R.R. Not Tolkien. I'm sorry, the guy that wrote the Game of Thrones books. What's his name? Martin.
George Martin.
George Martin.
Yeah, George.
And hearing them talk about their process, and then it varies across the board.
A lot of them do plan out to the nth detail everything that's gonna. And I
don't know if I could do that. I would need some basic structure if I were gonna do it. But I was always much better at writing short stories. In fact, I worked for this. I say that like it was a job. I was on the school newspaper staff, and then when I was in college, took a lot of creative writing classes and things like that because I was an English lit minor. And so I was always really great at writing short stories, but my attention span for writing a book couldn't do it.
That's something you have to learn.
I'm sure it's something you develop over time.
What I find is you have to. It's a certain. I don't know if I know the word that I'm trying to find, but a certain rhythm that you get into. You can start with the wrong rhythm, and all of a sudden you end up with a short story where you're supposed to have a novel. Mm-hmm. You have to allow it to unfold at a certain pace. That you have to learn that. And the first time you do it, though, if you do it once, you're like, okay, I did it. I know how to do. I know it can be done. Mm-hmm. So there's this feeling in the back of my head that I've done it once, I can do it twice. Yeah. And the more you do it, it just gets easier. It does.
Yeah.
It's like that muscle.
Yeah. So you've written sort of like crime, murder mystery type in Westerns. Is there any other sort of genre you want to explore in terms of your writing? Or do you kind of, I like these two and I'm going to stick with them?
Mystery is really my wheelhouse. Even when I write, I find that even my two Westerns, in a lot of ways, were mysteries.
Have that element
to
them.
I mean,
it's just a mystery set back in
exactly
the Old West.
The protagonist is on a horse instead of in a jalopy, or he's wearing a cowboy hat instead of a fedora. Basically, it's the same thing in a lot of ways. Though.
Do you find that you sort of follow a formula when you write? Is there like sort of A plus B equals C, or is it just meh, whatever?
That I would leave that up to other people. That they may see a formula in what I write. There probably at this point would be some kind of formula.
Well, I feel like every author has their own sort of like flavor, their signature.
I do have a flavor. I do. Now
write.
That question, I would say I've developed a style and a voice. For instance, when I signed the deal to write the two Westerns, Gary up at Kensington said, "I love your voice. Can you do that in the construct of writing a Western?" Mm-hmm. So I'd already developed a voice that was attractive to him. So I've developed that much. But as far as a real pattern, or like you were asking, I don't know. Yeah. Somebody else could. A formula. You could probably look at it and say, "Oh yeah, Tim, you got a formula. Look at you." And I would be interested to see.
I'm sure, like when you took your creative writing classes, I know that when I did it 20-something years ago, and I can't imagine it's changed that much. There were certain sort of like tropes that get used a lot.
Oh, sure.
In writing.
Sure. And I try to avoid those tropes.
Yeah.
So, but I'm probably
subconsciously they probably. Yeah. I feel like
they subconsciously that subconscious comes back in again. Yeah. And I'm sure that happens.
I don't know that I would want to know my formula because that would take the mystery out of it. That would take the fun out of it.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
It wouldn't be as creative.
And that's partly why I say maybe that's better left to somebody else to look at. And I don't think I would want to know it.
Yeah.
It would mess me up. Yeah. The very next book I wrote would probably be
You'd start
horrendous.
Seeing it and then think.
Yeah.
So, obviously owning a bookstore, you want to promote the sale of your own books. Who wouldn't? But what are some other authors, whether they be super famous or just regular local people? You've already mentioned one. Who do you find inspiration from? Who do you admire? Whose stories do you really captivate you?
Oh, well, that list is just endless.
I mean, top three.
Well, let me just
really
say,
putting you on the spot now.
Well, let me just say, for one, the store, we do like to spotlight area and state Texas writers.
Sure, yeah.
So, and those people some of them have become friends of mine, and I do get more inspiration sometimes out of reading what my friends are writing than I do like picking up George Martin.
Yeah.
Now I've met George Martin; he's a great guy.
Oh, really?
But I'm not a big fan of his work. Sorry, George. I'm not a huge fan of his work.
I had a hard time. I actually tried to read several books of the series before I started watching it.
Yeah.
And I read the first book. And he's like Tolkien for me.
He is a lot like Tolkien.
Slogging through
yes.
pages and pages and pages.
Slog being the key word.
Oh my God! I'm like, dude, get to the point.
Yeah,
Right.
I really enjoyed the books, but speaking of Game of Thrones, but I got to the point where like I in my head saw his pattern.
Yes.
And when it came to the like intimate detail of the food and all, like skim. Okay.
Yeah.
Read. Skim.
He did have a pattern.
So it was
he has a pattern, huh?
So it was.
Ooh.
So I I would say that I got the books and I really enjoyed the books, but I skipped a lot of it.
Yeah.
Just because I
love to read conversation.
I do too.
The extemporaneous detail don't matter to me.
Yeah.
That's
for somebody though. I think that would certain people. They when they read a book, they make a movie in their head.
Oh yeah.
He's the detail that he puts into it.
Sure.
Is very for somebody that thinks that way. I think that would be. But for me, I was like, okay, that sounds great. Okay, moving on. Let's
Yeah.
I mean, skip a couple pages.
I mean, we sell a lot of George's books.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong; he's a great writer. But
I can't wait. I still want to finish the series. I enjoyed the books immensely.
The one writer that made me want to write, if you want to get back to like the very beginning, when I read a writer that really, I saw how brilliant she wrote, and I was like, oh, I want to try this. It was Flannery O'Connor.
Okay.
Her short stories first, and then Wise Blood, the novel she wrote. I mean, those still just knock me over. She's the best writer.
I haven't read her stuff, but I have heard of her, and I have it on a list of I need to read this author.
Move it up your list.
Okay.
Move it up. I read those. I mean, years ago now, but I've reread them over and over, and they just continue to be the best of the best to me.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people. I love William Faulkner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people that love As I Lay Dying. Some people hate that book, and I love it. I like Southern writers. I like Southern Gothic a lot. I think there's a lot of Southern Gothic in my writing. I think there's a lot of influence there. Yeah. So.
Okay.
So, but I like a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, yeah.
I've read just about everything on the spectrum pretty much, and there's certain ones that I gravitate towards more. The mystery thriller, crime dramas tend to be my favorites. But then
Mine too.
I've also really enjoyed the fantasy world, and read a lot of stuff in that. And then
I started getting into historical fiction a lot.
Yeah,
has been a genre that as I've gotten older has.
I don't think there's a genre I haven't read and enjoyed.
Yeah,
and I always tell writers, because I do a writing workshop too, and I always tell writers, don't read just the genre that you want to write in. I mean, or the genre you feel comfortable in.
Yeah, you can draw inspiration from everywhere.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, even read poetry. I mean, we have the poetry night at the store. Read poetry, because you'll be surprised how poetry will influence what you write. Hopefully what you write will become more poetic, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there's nothing that you shouldn't not read.
I grew up reading. I would devour books. That was my escape from the real world. I, even into adulthood, would read like a book a week pretty much, and it's only been in recent years with workload and things like that, and then now my eyes are not treating me so great, that I haven't really had the opportunity as much as I would have liked. But yeah, I'll read just about anything as long as it, if it'll capture me in that first chapter.
Right.
I'll finish the book.
There you go.
There's only been a handful of times where I have not finished the book. I'll try to read 2 or 3, 4 more chapters, and I'm just like, okay, this is wow. Okay, put it down. I'm gonna go do something. Maybe I wasn't in the right frame of mind, or maybe it's just not the thing for me. But I love reading. I think everybody should read at least a couple books a year, just to expand their mind a little.
At least a couple.
At least a couple.
At least.
Yeah.
my younger sister, and this is, I have to ask this because she would, she's very much a bibliophile, if you want to call it that. She has started a collection of antique books.
Oh.
And she just, she reads, she's reading 3-4 books at a time. Yeah. And they're just sitting in different places at the house, and depending on where she is. Right. And my father-in-law was the same way. He would read, and I don't know how you keep up. I can't keep it straight.
I'm one at a time.
I couldn't keep it straight. Yeah. I want to be in this world for right now, and then I put that aside and I go visit another, But Nacogdoches being the oldest town in Texas.
Right.
Do you run across a lot of the antique style books? Do you have any of that kind of thing in your store? Are you more recent stuff, or is that something that you would look into venturing into in the future? Or?
Right now, 95% of our books are all just brand new. Right from the publisher. Mm-hmm. We do have a small used section, but as far as antique books, we don't do that.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, we have somebody walk in with a book that's like an old signed first edition, and I always have to pause and think about that because I would love to get into it on one level, but it can become a monster.
Yeah, it can.
I mean,
yeah.
Imagine the expense and the insurance and different things you'd have to have
right,
in a book that
right, and the research you have to do trying to find out.
Authenticity.
Right.
I can't speak today, y'all. Y'all know what I mean. Authenticity.
Right. So I haven't done that. Right next to us, in the downtown area, right next to us is an antique shop, and they deal with a little bit of that. So occasionally I'll send somebody next door with a book like that, and sit there and ponder: did I make the wrong decision? We could go into that in the future. If I decide to. I mean, it's just I'm the boss at the Bosslight, so I just kind of...
There you go. You do what you want.
I have my plate full right now, and that's basically the reason I don't do it.
Yeah, because that is a whole nother...
It is.
A whole other can of worms.
It puts us in a whole new category, and then you start getting a lot of phone calls saying, I've got this book, that book, and a stack of books here.
Right.
Can I bring them by?
Right. You almost need a separate staff to go to a
and I need somebody new to help me do it.
All that kind of stuff.
Right. And I can afford to pay myself, much less somebody else. So.
Well, shifting gears a little bit, because I could talk about this particular train of thought for quite a while. But, last year...
We are supposed to be a business podcast.
Oh, business.
I'm trying to get it back to that. But,
technically,
Okay.
Last year was very challenging for a lot of retail businesses.
Yes, it was.
And I was wanting to kind of maybe get your thoughts on how you guys processed last year, because if you don't have an online store, how do you mitigate a pandemic and being closed or restrictions in that way? So what did you guys do?
Well, we didn't see it coming, just like nobody else saw it coming. So we learned on the fly, and we kind of had to process things really quickly and try new things and find out what worked and what didn't work.
Yeah.
We don't have an online store because basically when you become an online store, you're competing with Amazon.
Yeah.
And that's just not something we ever wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But having said that, as soon as all the lockdown measures started coming, we did change some things. For a short while, we were deemed an inessential business and had to close the doors. Even at that point, we were able to, we called up and said, okay, what can we do?
Yeah.
And what we could do was if people called in and ordered or emailed, as the case may be, and ordered a book, we could take their payment, through PayPal or Venmo or something like that and mail it out to them.
Yeah.
So we became a mail order to a large extent for 2 or 3 months, and that's all we did.
I think that's great because it's we live in this world where you order everything online and it gets shipped to you, and in a way it's kind of harkened back to a time where you just called in an order and it got delivered to your house.
Right.
And
I was like a milkman going around putting things on the people's doorstep.
Yeah.
I really was.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
And when I say we were doing mail order, it was 99% people in Nacogdoches that just were supporting our store, that were doing anything they could to keep us afloat. And we're still appreciative of those people.
I mean, that's one of the great things about living in a small community is that sort of rally around, staples.
They did rally around us, and so many people came to me and said, and told me what the store meant to them. And it meant a lot to me to hear that, because at that time we didn't know what was happening. We really didn't know, are we going to be able to continue? So them rallying around us and telling us those kinds of things made all the difference. And for a long time we were, I was delivering books, on people's doorsteps. And then after a short amount of time, we were able to do curbside service. And I was telling somebody the other day, I think we'll probably keep that forever, because there are certain people, elderly people or people who have a hard time, mobility issues, things like that. And the way we're situated right now, we're on a corner where people can drive right up and park, and I can just take the books out and hand it to them through their window, just like burgers at McDonald's. So we started doing that. So we adapted. You have to adapt. That's the thing. If you want to stay in business, you have to adapt. So
and it was a challenge for so many, and it's good to see a lot of local businesses were able to survive it, and I'm glad for that, because I know for us owning small businesses how difficult it was. Our main concern was trying to keep our employees paid during that time, because
thankfully we didn't have any employees except for me, and I was
that probably takes some pressure off.
It took a little pressure off, although it's still there.
But, definitely.
What was terrible to me was looking around and seeing so many of our fellow business people going out of business over the past 6 months or so. I mean, that just really killed me. The downtown area, that I can name off people who aren't there anymore. So that was difficult.
Downtown Nacogdoches is such a charming, like it's
one of the prettiest downtowns.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank
you. I spent a lot of time making it that way.
There's so many different interesting places and variety. It's a really neat place to.
It's a nice place to.
It really
I live downtown and I work downtown, so I'm a real downtown person. So I love it. Every once in a while I go out on Main Street and just think, this is my street. I work on it, I live on it. So
that's very cool.
That's awesome.
Really
immersed yourself in the community and the business.
But it has been the most difficult year. We've been in business for 5 years, and this past year has been difficult. I mean, it's always difficult. It's a
struggle regardless.
Small business is not an easy thing in America these days, unfortunately. I wish it was easier. But
it's made more difficult every single year, it feels like, with just the way.
Well, last year was certainly.
Yes. It was a doozy.
It was a doozy. Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of that was what sparked this new format for the podcast, was like I saw how many people were struggling. I know how much we had struggled, but we had it relatively easier.
Right.
And wanting to how can we use this platform to elevate other businesses that aren't getting that same exposure or getting that same help. And so that's kind of where this all came from. So,
we love what you do.
Maybe it's a, it's a tiny little pebble in an ocean, but I feel like I'm doing something. If, you can help out.
All those tiny pebbles start to accumulate. They do. That's right.
Well, owning a business like this and just the challenges of last year, what has it taught you about yourself and maybe how you want to move your business forward?
Oh, great question. Can I sleep on that and get back to you?
Sorry, that kind of does put people on the spot, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know. Like I said, we adapt with the times and we change when we have to. I will tell you, there's a decent chance we're going to be moving to a different location.
Oh.
So I think in the next year.
In downtown?
Yes. Okay. I would hope we will stay in downtown forever.
It would be weird to have you guys somewhere else after all of this.
It's not a foregone thing, but I think probably the next year we'll see us moving to a different location.
Okay.
And when we do, we'll probably have somewhat of a reset. We've been here for 5 years. We've learned a lot in 5 years. We know exactly now what we can do and what we do well, I should say, and what doesn't work so well. So it would be a good thing for us in a lot of ways. It would give us a chance to reset and not redefine what we do, because we've learned what we do well.
You want to stick with what you do.
But to refocus on what we do the best, Yeah. So I think the next year is going to be a year of change, but good change.
Good.
Yeah. And I don't know where we're moving. We're looking at a few options right now.
Okay.
And I don't know for sure. I mean, y'all will be the first to know. How's that?
You'll have a big grand reopening party maybe once this COVID thing is over.
Yeah, that would be. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
That would be.
Oh, that would be great.
Something, it feels so weird to just. I mean, and I'm more of a homebody introvert anyway, so this hasn't bothered me as much as, say, if I had been more of an extroverted person. I can't imagine how terrible this last year's been for them. But, after a while, you kind of go, it would be nice to go out and see and do.
Yeah.
I haven't done that in a year. So.
I think the store has kept me from going absolutely insane. Because I always tell people, I'm a writer and I'm a business owner. And writing is a very lonely endeavor. I mean, you're doing it just, I don't co-write. I've never co-written anything. So it's a very insular, solitary thing. Yeah. So, and I can become that hermit that never comes out of his house. Yeah. But the store gives me that other side that I do need, where I've got some kind of a
keep that balance. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm all into that Zen Buddhist.
I mean, hey, we're all trying to find a balance. That's it.
That's the key.
If you know the secret, tell us.
Yeah. Think of the money that person could make if they just had the answer, right?
He needs to write a book.
Yes, another self-help book. Do you guys utilize social media to help get your business out there?
Absolutely.
What's your favorite platform?
Facebook. Yeah, okay. I hate to say it because it's probably not cool with the cool kids.
I mean, if it works, it works.
Well, that's the thing. It works. Yeah. We're also on Instagram.
I feel like your store caters to a whole genre of ages and people.
We do.
And so Facebook is probably the melting pot for all of those things.
It seems to be where. Okay, here's the deal. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Those are the main three we're on. But I do know that if I put something out on Facebook today, tomorrow people will come in because of it. Yeah. Whereas the other ones, it's a little more fuzzy. I think over time it works, but Facebook has always been our bread and butter as far as that goes. Okay. I mean, we have a fairly active Facebook page.
Good.
Yeah. Well, that's good because most businesses these days have to utilize some form of social media.
We would be out of business if we didn't.
It's a whole different ball game than it was 20 years ago, and so now you have to get on whichever one is going to be. Right. And what I always tell people when they ask me, well, what should I be doing when they have nothing, they have no clue about social media, and I was like, what type of business do you have, and what social media platform is going to really cater and focus your energy on that, because trying to do all of them
it's insane.
First of all, you're just going to be slogging through a bunch of stuff, and you're not really going to hit the right audiences on every platform.
Especially with me, because I'm the only one that works there.
Exactly.
So I am the social media guy, and I am the guy behind the counter, and I'm the guy that gets the books in and puts them on the shelf.
You do the inventory.
So. Yes.
I saw a lot of businesses during the shutdown and in last year that have similar types of businesses like you, where they weren't deemed essential, and so they were shut down. Right. But during that shutdown time, they would do live streams or do a lot more like the story type things they'd put on their social media that really kind of tried to generate interaction. And did you guys utilize anything like that?
I wish we could. If we could, we would do more of it. The problem we have right now, and it's a problem that could probably be solved but hasn't been, we have such a weak signal in our
Gotcha.
That every time I try to do those, all you get are these really fuzzy pictures that looks like I'm on Mars or something. You can't hardly really tell where I'm at. And,
I can relate. My internet at home is total crap.
Same.
And
those old buildings, the wiring is just not very good. They weren't built for our modern technology at all.
Sure.
So that's been the problem. If what I can do, and I do occasionally, is you can make videos and then post them later, but the live stream just doesn't seem to work. Doesn't work, and I wish it did. It'd make it easy.
Yeah.
I mean, And I love places that do that. I wish we could.
Especially for your events, like the poetry
Oh,
thing
I know.
and the music,
poetry
and
would be ideal.
Yeah.
And we've always had trouble with that. Maybe if we do move to a new place, it will have better system for that. I don't know.
I wonder if a Wi-Fi booster type of, would
that's one of those...
be strong enough, or if it would work, or if it would be a waste of money.
Technologically, I'm a Luddite, as they would say. I don't really know any of that stuff. I need somebody to come in and tell me, Tim, here's what you need, and this is how you do it. And probably I could be up and running within a week, and have things that I can only dream about right now. That's one of the other things about not having a real team behind me that's able to kind of do those kinds of things.
If anybody's listening, and y'all know about that sort of thing.
And if you'll work for free,
or in trade,
if you
in trade,
give free advice,
free writing advice for sure, and maybe a free book every once in a while.
Do you could maybe even hook up with SFA and have some interns come in?
You go.
SFA, listen to me now. Okay, we have heard from SFA 5 or 6 times that there's a possibility they could do that, and it always falls through. We never hear from them. We're like, yes, we would. They're always like,
yes, please, let's do this.
Yeah. Would this benefit you? And we're like, yes, please, it would. Yeah. And then we wait, and nothing ever comes of it. It seems like it would be an ideal thing for a student to come down and be able to help us out and get some kind of credit, toward their degree, and help us too. Yeah. So
that way you get some labor and they learn some things, and boom.
We would love for that to happen.
Yeah.
I'll just throw that out there.
There you go. SFA, if you're listening. We talk about some of the negative things because of last year, but what is some positive things that have happened, some achievements, some successes, or what's your favorite thing about your job? Something that's just puts the bad this is why I do what I do.
The best thing that's happened, and this, I don't know if this answers your question actually, but the best thing that happened, I heard that run by, and this is kind of funny. It's kind of tragic comedy. Last February, we had a major article in Texas Highways magazine.
I think I remember
it was 5 pages of 3 or 4 photographs, including one full-page photograph of yours truly, which was absolutely amazing. And that was in February of last year, the month before the pandemic hit,
and everything.
And we were looking at the sky's the limit here because it was in Texas Highways magazine, which
for all of our people who listening and outside the U.S. or even outside Texas, that is a big publication for our state.
Like the two biggest publications are Texas Highways and Texas Monthly, and we were in one of them.
Yeah.
And now we've been in both of them, actually, not a feature article, but we've been in both of those.
Yeah.
And those are the things that make me proud.
Yeah.
The fact that we've got some my phone's going off. Somebody needing a book, probably.
Book nerd to the rescue.
Turn that off. What was I saying?
You've been in both publications, and that makes you really proud.
Getting that kind of recognition. Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
From people around the state, not just in Nacogdoches too. Like I said, during those terrible months when the pandemic was first hitting, the way they rallied around us and just kept us going.
Yeah.
But just all of that feedback that we get and being in Texas Highways was just a thrill. Yeah. I've still got that copy of the magazine on the table there at the store and show anybody that'll stop long enough.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You recognize this guy?
Imagine, yeah.
It's nice to be recognized for the things that you do, and
we've only been there at that point. We'd been there for 4 years, and I felt like we'd come a long way in 4 years.
Yeah.
I really did.
I mean, those first couple of years are the make or break it point for any small business.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can make it to year 5, then you're probably going to be okay.
We hope so.
Mostly.
Yeah,
if you made it through last year as your 5th year, then you're doing something right. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, that's great. Yeah, I think I remember seeing something about that, and that's awesome. I love that kind of stuff.
But a lot of authors know about us.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool too. Just the fact that I think we have become one of the flagship bookstores in East Texas, and that is just a really cool thing because we didn't set out to do that,
right.
you know.
Right.
But we have become that, and that just that's
something we haven't really touched
me.
on is, we live in the world of Amazon, as you kind of sort of mentioned earlier, and mom and pop bookstores or even the big chain bookstores kind of went a little bit extinct there for a while.
To the wayside, yeah.
Right.
And, it's kind of nice to see this resurgence of actual, retail bookstores because there's, sometimes you just want to go in and get a hard copy of a book,
Yep.
And
sometimes you just want to go and browse. I remember spending, long time ago, hours in Hastings just I just want to sit, I want to touch, and I want to smell the books, and I want to hear the pages ruffle, and I don't want to go online and look at a picture and click. I want to
I'm a tactile person. I like to hold it in my hand.
I want that. I want to read a couple of pages and see
Technically,
if I feel
you can go on Amazon and find any book and get it sent to you.
Right.
But you do miss that
it's
human.
Not the same experience.
There's a human quality coming in because a lot of my customers, especially, are repeat customers, and I get to know them. Mm-hmm. And there are customers when a book will come in, I'll almost set it aside knowing Sarah will love this book. I'm going to set this aside for her.
I was going to ask if you get to know
people.
Yeah.
And there's a human touch. That's kind of a maudlin way to put it, but it's true that you just can't get a human connection. That's the better way to say it. Right there.
And especially as a bookstore owner, if you've read the book, going and talking to a person and saying, "Hey, did you really like this book? Do I really want to spend $30 on the hardcover right now?" Or what's your opinion?
Yeah.
And what I found out, I certainly can't read every book in my store. I don't have that time. But what I will do is when my customers come in and they buy books, they'll often come back and tell me this book was a 4 out of 5. This book is not so good. This book was great, but it had a terrible. And I'll remember it because people will come in and say, "What do you think of this book?" I'll be like, "I didn't read it, but some of my good customers love that book."
Okay.
So the customers get to know each other too. I mean, we've had people make friends in the store, which is another great thing.
Yeah,
different customers come in,
awesome.
Bunch of nerds, uniting together.
Yeah.
It is a nerd central.
Start a book club.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a book club at the store, except we kind of set it aside for now because of the pandemic. But we have book clubs. I'll tell you something real quick. What I was almost stunned about. Just opening up the store after 2 or 3 years is finding out how many book clubs are in Nacogdoches.
Yeah.
My gosh, there are a lot of book clubs.
Yeah.
I mean, people come in and say, "I'm in such and such book club and we're doing this book," so I would order that book. And then I would find out that different people that I knew were actually in the same book club. "Oh, you know this person," So you make connections, and it's just I always tell people this is the best thing about my job. I go in every day, and I know there's something that's going to happen that day that's never happened before. There will be somebody that comes in that makes some kind of a connection with me, and I don't know how it's going to be, what it's going to be, where they're going to be from. And it may be that they're from England, or it may be that they're from right up the road. You never know, but there will be one person that comes in there, and I'll often tell the person, you'll hear me say this if you hang around, "You made my day today."
Yeah.
Because there's always one person that just makes the day.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing about my job. The other thing is I wake up some mornings just like everybody does, and you just don't feel like you can hardly drag yourself out of bed.
Just don't wanna.
You just have a case of the I don't want to.
Yeah.
But I pull myself up there, and what will happen 99.9% of the time, first person starts coming in there, I start talking to them, next person comes in, 3 or 4 people come in, all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh wait, I felt bad." It just absolutely is like a tonic for your maladies.
Therapeutic in a way. It sounds like.
Yeah.
That's great.
Very nice.
So you guys offer a writer's workshop, you do a poetry night, you have a book club. Are there any other little tidbits we need to know about the Bosslight? Did I just cover it all?
You covered everything. Right now, we're not doing that writer's workshop much, but what I do have I have a lot of writers who come in and just ask me writing questions.
Yeah.
And they know it's just like here today. Get me started, and I'll talk forever. I mean,
we need to do like a bonus episode at some point in the future, and we just sit and talk writing.
We can do that.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. I mean, mostly just because I used to have an interest in doing that, so I'm curious.
I have 4 or 5 regular customers right now that come in, and when I see them walk through the door, I know, okay, they're bringing more writing questions.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll buy a book. Some of them do.
Yeah.
But a lot of them just want to talk writing, and I will talk and talk and talk.
Well, do you have any general advice for someone who, say, wants to be a writer or wants to open a bookstore or just start a business in general? What little pearl of wisdom would you offer?
Which one of those? Because I've got different answers for each one of them.
Well, you're a writer. Just give us some writing advice.
Right.
Just
a lot. I tell people that all the time. Because people come in with all these questions. How do I go about writing? You sit down and you write.
Yeah.
I say there are a lot of people that talk about writing. That's not a writer.
Yeah.
Some people will talk about some book they've got in their head forever, and then you hear later that they died or something. And I say never die with your book inside of you. Get it out.
Yeah.
Sit down and write.
I think a lot of, like, for me, thinking about writing a book, I would think that I would want to start at the beginning and work all the way. I would want it to be perfect, work all the way through. But I imagine that's not how it works. You make notes.
That's actually exactly the way it works with me.
Oh, well, good for you. I would imagine for people that are having writer's block or anything like that, you just, it might be trash, but just get something down,
You said 2 words that I don't believe in.
Oh, okay.
Writer's block. A good friend of mine told me one time there is no such thing as writer's block, and I was like, oh yeah, right. But I've become convinced he's absolutely right.
Elaborate on that for just a second.
Well, just sit down and write. Anybody, you can write poorly. I mean, there may
just
be times
write gibberish.
There may be times when you don't feel inspired. Sit down and write anyway, because what happens, and I guarantee you write something when you're not inspired at all, and then you write something where you just feel inspired, like you got something speaking through you, and you give it to other people. They won't be able to tell which one's which. A lot of times that one where you felt like you were uninspired is the one that speaks to people. So I don't believe in writer's block anymore. I really don't. I think you've got to sit down. I always tell people, I'll give you a little bit of the beginning of my writing workshop. Sit down and write for 15 minutes a day if you want to write. Anybody can write for 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do, and you feel like you've accomplished something. And what will happen is a lot of days you will sit down to write 15 minutes, and you'll look up, and it'll be an hour later. And it's like, oh, whoops, And you will be surprised, even if you write 15 minutes a day at the end of a month, how much you will have written.
Yeah.
I mean, you can write novels that way.
That's
you
great.
can. If you write 15 minutes a day, at the end of the year, you'll have a novel.
That's awesome. Yeah. I didn't think of it that way, but yeah.
Well,
what little advice would you have for running a business?
Same thing. Just do it. I mean, there's no secret. If there was a secret, they would have written the book, and every business would succeed, and they don't.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say: follow your passion.
Perseverance.
Follow your passion. As long as you're passionate about something, you can persevere. And you can adapt, and you can do what you love to do. I think that's all it is, really. And if you're not passionate about it, why do it anyway?
Exactly. Yeah. If you're going to spend that much time of your life on something, you better love it.
You better love it.
Yeah. Definitely. Tim, tell everybody where they can find you online and all the places, so that way they can come and buy something from you, or shoot you an email.
Yep. If you want to find us in person, we're at 123, easy to remember, 123 East Main, downtown Nacogdoches, right there on the square. Let's think a minute. We're also at thebosslight.com. We have a good blog on there that a lot of people are reading. We're on Facebook. Look up The Bosslight. It'll lead you right to us. Or you can email me at thebosslight123@gmail.com.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking time out of your day off to come over and drive over here in this terrible weather and sit and talk with us.
It was a pleasure.
I could really do this for like another hour or two probably, but we've all got to get on with our days. So
it was a pleasure, and it's also a tax write-off. Yeah. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm very serious about that bonus episode about writing. We'll have to brainstorm about that.
I'd love to do that, actually.
Yeah, love awesome. To. Well, I'm so glad that small businesses like yours have made it, and we hope continued success for you guys.
Thank you.
As the days go on.
So. Same to y'all.
Awesome. Well, guys, I hope y'all enjoyed listening to this particular episode. Tim is a great storyteller, and please join us next time as we have our next story.
Have a good one.
Do you have a story to tell? We want to hear it. If you'd like to be a guest on our podcast and share your story, contact us on our website at PaynePoints.com or any of the social media linked on our website. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. We'd appreciate a review, a like, or a comment to let us know what you think. You can find all of our podcasts linked on our website under the podcast tab. Once again, thanks for joining us, and we want to wish everybody a wonderful day.